Hello and welcome. My name is Mpho Tsedu. Ranked among the most powerful defense forces in Africa, the South African National Defense Force has, since the advent of democracy, been engaged in a number of peacekeeping missions in the continent under the umbrella of the African Union and the United Nations. However, recent reports indicate that the SANDF faces massive retrenchments due to a multi-billion rand financial crisis. While cost-saving measures are being proposed by the force, some opposition parties have indicated that this will lead to severe capability losses, with this likely to have a negative impact on the image of South Africa's armed forces. My guest today is Dr. Sam Gulube, is the Secretary of the Department of Defense and Military Veterans. Dr. Gulube, welcome to the show and thank you for making time. You were recently in the media, not sounding very good. How bad is the situation?
Actually, I must thank you for this opportunity to try and explain that situation, because the reports that we are such in a financial crisis, there are massive retrenchment coming up in the National Defense Force, are not accurate. They are totally inaccurate. There are no plans for retrenchment, let alone massive retrenchment in the South African National Defense Force. What we were talking about was a shortfall in our budget, that our budget right now is not adequate to meet the required employees' remuneration budget that we have established because of the requirements that we have in the South African National Force today. There are no plans for massive retrenchment. There are no plans for compulsory, I don't even know where that word come from, compulsory retrenchments. Today, hardly any employer talks about compulsory retrenchment. But what we were talking about is the challenge that we have in that shortfall that we have for the remuneration of employees, that it makes it difficult for us to fill up the vacancies. And when there are people who are leaving the defense force voluntarily for greener pastures or for whatever reasons, then it makes it difficult to replace those people who might be voluntarily leaving the defense force.
Now, would you therefore say that the department is in a financial crisis?
No. Not financial crisis. The department is facing financial challenges. And these challenges, there have been a number of reasons for these financial challenges that we're facing. One of them is that there has been constantly reductions in the allocation of our national budget since 2008, 2009. I'm sure we are not the only department, but we are one of the departments that is severely affected by those reductions. In 2011, our budget was reduced by about 400 million. 2012 was 600 million. 2013 it was more than 600 million.
Is it not because you don't spend it?
No. It is not because we don't spend it. It is because when we do into the budget allocation, we are informed that yes, 3 years ago we thought that you will receive, we allocated to you so much, but right now, as we are allocating this budget, we are cutting it and we are reducing your budget. And then, of course, the National Treasury will provide reasons why we are reducing the budget, most of which is related to the global economic meltdown.
Now, the 13.8 billion rand that you have, where do you spend it? What's your main consumer there?
We can say that about 50% of our budget goes to the remuneration of the employees, either through their various salaries, through their various allowances that they will have to receive when they're deployed along the borders, maritime security programs and projects, or when they're deployed in peacekeeping missions outside. So all of that, we just package it as remuneration of employees. And then the next chunk of our budget goes to operations. We usually call it goods and services, operations, and various programs that we have to deploy. And then the third component then goes to the acquisition of capital assets, that is like our weapons systems.
I want to refer you, and I mean, you have already said this is not necessarily true, I want to refer you to a statement by somebody who's regarded as a defense analyst, Helmut Heitmann, who says that the critical acquisitions, such as those of heavy lift aircraft and maritime patrol aircraft, the latter dating back to World War II, are already years behind deadline, and therefore the army, or rather every arm of the defense force, is in a crisis. There are not enough planes, pilots, vessels, sailors, soldiers, and vehicles, so says Mr. Heitmann.
Yes, sir.
What's your response?
Our response to that is that when you look at the 2014 Defense Review, which was adopted, shall we say, approved by the Cabinet on the 19th of March,
yes,
some of the challenges that is facing the South African National Defence Force are highlighted there. And this talks to the limitation of various capabilities that are required by the South African National Defence Force. But it does not mean that it is in a crisis.
Okay.
It means that if we don't do something, then we will not be able to fulfill our mandate and our mission as required by this nation. There is a need to improve the capabilities of our landward forces, of our air forces, as well as of our naval forces, our sailors. And there are programs. We do have programs in the South African National Defence Force to enhance and improve on those capabilities. The challenge that we have right now is that the resources that is available to us makes it very difficult to actually reach the standard where analysts like Heitmann and actually South Africa as a nation would be satisfied that the capabilities that they have now actually is adequate to face the challenges and the requirements of the South African nation as a country in terms of defending our borders,
okay,
in terms of fighting the piracies on our seas and our shores, in terms of protecting our coastal lines, and in terms of being able to be deployed in the peacekeeping missions in order to stabilize the situations not only in the SADC countries but in Africa as such.
Now, if it is true that the equipment is aging and troops are overstretched, are we safe?
Yes, we are safe. But should we be concerned about the level of the sustainability of that safety? Yes. So what I can say to you is that where you sit now, right now, you are well defended and you are safe, but you must be concerned about the sustainability of the safety and the defense that we are enjoying today.
I want us to talk about the cross-cutting or the cost-cutting measures only after the break. For now, we're going to take a quick break. Please don't go away.
Zoom into Africa. This is Madagascar. The president is Mr. Heri Rajaonarimampianina. Madagascar got independent from France on 26 June in 1960. The population is more than 21 million people. One of the major languages spoken is French. Monetary unit is Ariari.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest in studio today is Dr. Sam Glube, the Secretary in the Department of Defense and Military Veterans. Now, Dr. Glube, is it possible to avert, I don't know whether I should now refer to the retrenchment or compulsory early retirement, because you've said,
there is no such
yes.
Actions or programs or intentions in the Department of Defense as I'm talking to you today. No intentions of massive retrenchments, no intentions of compulsory retirements in the Department of Defense.
Now, why would, I mean, the DA, for instance, says the Defence Force needs to downsize or to reduce expenditure on personnel so that it can properly fund operations and acquisitions. How are you going to do that if there isn't any retirements, imminent retrenchments or things like those?
Well, it's very difficult for me to speak on behalf of the DA, but if I hear what you say they are saying, what we can refer to is the fact that we do have a plan on the allocations of our budget. And according to our plan, the remunerations of employees should not be more than 50% where it is today. I would say we would like to see the remuneration of employees at least at about 45%. And then the other 30 and 40% maybe going towards acquisition of capital assets that we refer to or operations as such. So it means then, as planners in the Department of Defense, when we plan for the annual budget, we then have to say we are going to put a ceiling on the amount that we're going to spend on the remuneration of employees. And once you put that ceiling that we have put, then you will have to balance your budget. And sometimes balancing the budget then will mean what you can call natural attrition, as I indicated, when people will be leaving for greener pastures or for whatever reasons when they reach the natural retirement age. Or when people, for one reason or another, prefer to be transferred to the other departments or to the other functions as such, and you have critical posts that are opening up in the environment that you're operating in, then you'll have to look at that as some of the opportunities that are going to help you balance the budget and deal with that shortfall.
But currently, you are not filling up vacant posts.
We are filling up the critical vacant posts, and we do sometimes have to apply our mind in regarding other vacant posts that are available, the results of which might be a decision not to fill up that post for the time being until the situation stabilizes.
And then you've got the 4,000 vacant posts.
No, I think what they were referring to, I saw something like that in the reports, but I think what they're referring to is that we have an annual intake of force for the rejuvenation of the South African National Defence Force. If you talk about the rejuvenation of the South African National Defence Force, according to our plans, the requirement is that every year we must take in youngsters, the young women and men in uniform for training in the program that we call the Military Skills Development Systems, MSDS. There we would like to take about 10,000 every year. That's according to our plan. But because of the shortfall in our budget, we are only able to take about 3,000 to 4,000 a year every year in order to try and rejuvenate our...
And who are you taking in there? Are you taking from matric or from varsity or from FET colleges?
We prefer to take from matric. But also we do have a university programs where we recruit people, the graduates, that when they finish they must come to the National Defence Force, but also from the FETs. As long as the age is between 18 and 25. I don't know how old you are. I'm not going to ask you. But maybe you might be one of my targets for recruitment next time.
Well, if you've got a channel, it's okay. But then let's look at how much of a risk this lack of achievement of your targets is to the Defence Force.
Well, in terms of a risk, we usually classify our risk as mild to moderate to severe. I think this will classify as a moderate risk in terms of, I'm talking now specifically on the shortfall that we have for the remuneration of employees. But going down the line, unless we do something about the the capabilities. Now, when you come to the capabilities of our South African National Defence Force, there you are having a moderate to severe risk if we do nothing about the budget. Actually, countries like other African countries of our nature or other developing countries, they would be spending about 3% of their GDP, the gross domestic product, on defense. We are only spending 1.2% of our GDP on defense. That's why we end up with a budget of 42 to 43 billion rands. Where, in order then to be able to enhance our capabilities that the analysts are talking about, or the capabilities that we require as a country, to make sure that our country is defended and our people are protected and its territorial integrity is maintained intact, we are talking about the requirement of about maybe 55 billion dollars. I mean rands of a budget a year. Today we're at about 42 billion.
Now, perhaps two questions here. This gentleman, Helmut Hittman,
Yes.
says we need an additional 20,000 troops to work, including in the peacekeeping deployments and border protection. Currently, how many men and women do we have in uniform?
We have about 78,000, but not all of them are at the stage of deployable. Some of them are in the support staff, and some of them might be in management and in other categories. I think what he is referring to there is that while we have deployed, as it is in the DRC, in Sudan, South Sudan, and we have also deployed in the Mozambican Channel to fight piracy, and we have about 13 companies that are deployed along the borders with Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Lesotho, and so forth. You should take into account that these people who are deployed cannot stay there for 3 years without rotation. You need you will need three elements of three categories of your troops in order to effectively maintain your deployment. There will be those deployed on duty. There will be those, the second category are those in training, and the third category are those in rotation who are relieving those who are deployed. So for any, if I say to you, we need today about 20 companies to make sure that our borders are effectively defended. It means 20 companies deployed, 20 companies in training, and 20 companies in rotation.
All right. I want us to take a quick break, and when we return, we talk about a serious matter here. And I wonder, how did you make it here? Because you're supposed to be arrested. But we'll talk about that after the break. This is Question Time. Please don't go away. Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest is Dr. Sam Gulube. He's the Secretary of Defense. Now, Dr. Gulube.
Yes,
well,
sir.
It is true that I really wonder how you made it, because you're supposed to be in detention by now.
No, I'm not supposed to be in detention. That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those issues where personally I found it very hard to explain how lawyers can go and confuse our legal systems to that effect. When there's a judgment to say that is passed to say these people that have been, whose contract has expired, must be rehired into the job, and then we say no, give us time to explain why we can't rehire the people, why we can't extend these contracts that they have. And then while we're waiting for the date to appear in court, our date in court. Before our date in court comes, other set of lawyers have gone into the system to say, no, these people are in contempt of court, while we're waiting for the date for our date in court. And then, of course, eventually the judge realizes that, no, actually, that warrant for arrest that was issued was not supposed to have issued. That's why there was never an arrest. There's never should have been a warrant for arrest, and that's why I'm here this afternoon with you.
Now, is the unionization of members of the Defence Force a security risk?
Yes, it is.
What would you prefer?
Because the idea is that if there is an attack against the country today, God forbid, and then the commander of the South African National Defence Force, the chief of the South African National Defence Force, General Shoke, issues orders to say, please come out of the barracks, let's go and defend the country. And then somebody, the union leader says no. Shop steward comes in and says, no, today we're toying, what's going to happen to you?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to imagine that.
I'm sure you wouldn't.
Yeah. So what would you prefer? Shouldn't the...
What we did, I'm sure you remember in 2009, there was a march to the union building. I'm sure we all talk about it. Since then, we actually engaged with the members of South African National Defence Force. We engaged with the groups that were expressing their grievances in a manner that was unacceptable as it were. And then the minister at that time then said, in order to solve this problem, we should give the members of the South African National Defence Force a platform for them to be able to address their grievances, for them to have the bargaining opportunities like any other employees have as such. So we then instituted the Defence Force Service Commission Act as a law. The members of parliament passed a law to say that in the ministry you will establish a Defence Service Commission Act, which will then serve as spokesperson, as a platform for addressing all the conditions of service for the members of the South African National Defence Force. And right now, that Defence Force Service Commission Act is active. It is chaired by Professor Edna van Harde, a former professor at Stellenbosch University, and is functioning effectively. Actually, it is beginning to address the conditions of service for the members of the South African National Defence Force. So there is no need whatsoever to have trade unions in the military, because the platforms have been set. In addition to that, you also have the military ombuds. The military ombuds office was established by the Act, Military Ombud Act, and the military ombud was appointed and sworn in by the constitutional judge, and that is Lieutenant General retired Matanzima, who is also there to ensure that the grievances of the members of the South African National Defence Force are addressed and the conditions of service of the members of the South African National Defence Force are addressed. Again, no need for unions in the military.
There seems to be a very hostile relationship between the department and the National Defence Union.
That's an understatement.
Okay. What is the state of affairs?
And it's because, as it is right now, we don't recognize the unions in the South African military, as I indicated. Because we have the Military Ombuds Office and we have the Defence Force Service Commission.
But they are a very noisy, group.
Noisier than me.
We hear of them, all the time. It's very rare that you will not hear them.
Yeah, I know. I think that's unfortunate. And there is really no need. I don't know whether how far they have engaged with the Defence Service Commission. I don't know how far they've engaged with the military ombuds. I think now that you are drawing this to our attention, after this one is just to talk to the structures that have been established to address the conditions of service of the unions, to see how much are they engaging with those people that you say they are noisy out there.
And there's, I don't know whether you'll consider this politicking, mere politicking. The DA has, like I said earlier, they hold, I think they have their own shadow minister. I don't know whether you are also secretary to that, particular desk. But they have been very vocal about certain things that are happening within the defense force, which the language would be non-progressive utterances in the corridors of the defense force. How much of politics are you having to deal with in the defense force?
No, the defense force is apolitical. It's a non-partisan structure. Even when we take our oath, the oath that is taken by all members of the South African National Defense Force highlights that very clearly, that we serve the government of the day and we are not here to advance the interest or the objectives of any political party.
So when the DA says, for instance, reject the cost-cutting measures, do you just consider that as just politics?
Well, as you know, according to our democracy, we do have civil oversight over military.
Yes.
And according to our constitution, we do have the commander-in-chief for the defense force, which is the president.
Yes.
And who then appoints the executive to provide this civil oversight over military. And as a department, we are then structured in the Department of Defense as a South African National Defense Force, which is headed by General Shoke, and as a Secretary for Defense heading the Secretariat Council that advised the minister on various defense policies. So then you would be structured about the defense policies that we have established, and if we are non-compliant with the defense policies, if we are non-compliant with the regulations of the country, then I think the parliament has a right to complain about it.
Okay. Thank you very much. The last one, by the way, very quickly. Are the members going to be reinstated or rehired?
Which ones now?
The 24 that you didn't...
I don't know about the 24 now.
Okay. That was question time for today. A big thank you to my guest and to you for watching the show. Have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.